welcome to the Midlife Pleasure and Power conversation series. I'd just like to start this meeting today by acknowledging that I am conducting this interview on Wurundjeri country. I'd like to acknowledge that this land has never been ceded and to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be interviewing KEMI NEKVAPIL. KEMI, welcome to the series. Thank you so much for joining us.
So happy to be here, Shay.
Thank you. So I'm going to read out your bio, KEMI. So KEMI is an ICF credentialed executive and personal coach. KEMI is also a speaker and facilitator who's worked in the wellness industry for more than 25 years. Having studied leadership and purpose at the Gross National Happiness Centre in Bhutan, trained as a yoga teacher in India with a 23-year yoga and meditation practice, KEMI understands there's a process for meaningful connection to ourselves, our work, our families and communities. In her coaching practice, KEMI works with female leaders to unlock the obstacles that prevent value-based leadership. And as a facilitator, KEMI designs programs and speaks to global organisations. In 2018, she was invited to Richard Branson's Necker Island and sat on a panel discussing humanity at work. She has since completed training in Texas with Dr. Brené Brown as a Dare to Lead facilitator to work with teams and organisations to create daring leaders and courageous cultures. KEMI is also a facilitator for the Hunger Project Australia, leading immersive leadership programs to Africa. She's the author of 2 books and is currently writing her 3rd. And KEMI is the mother of teenagers, a wife, an endurance athlete, a dedicated gardener, and a lover of really good food. What a legend.
It's so weird sitting there while someone is reading out your bio.
Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, just amazing bio. And I wanted to read the whole thing because it is so inspiring. So KEMI, thank you so much again. So I'm going to start this interview by asking a question that we ask all of our interviewees, which is, what do you feel, what comes up for you when you hear the words or the title or the phrase midlife, pleasure and power?
Oh, this thing, awesome. Great. Bring it on.
Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes,
yeah.
100%. I definitely do not subscribe to the idea that as women get older, we become less and less valuable. In fact, if we are willing to be so, we become more valuable.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So KEMI, if you're open to it, I'd love to hear about your own experience of your perimenopause journey, and perhaps have there been any sort of surprising elements for you that have come up for you in this period of your life?
Yeah, it's interesting. So actually I turned 47 on Monday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. I knew that I wanted to know about perimenopause and menopause well before I got into that phase. Like I said, I've never sort of subscribed to this idea that as women get older, kind of our value disappears. And I realized, a little bit like puberty and all these other kind of female transition states, they're not really spoken about in the patriarchal construct. And so I was reading up on it long before things started changing for me. I think the first thing that started happening for me, to be honest, and it was during lockdown last year in Victoria, Melbourne, was I just had, suddenly my cycle changed, and it changed in that the week before, I just said to my husband, I am not fit for human consumption. Like, it's going to be best for you in particular. Like, I could manage to keep myself kind of okay for the children.
Yeah.
But for my husband, I was like, my level of hate for you right now is so high. And I've done enough research to know it's not real. You know, because we also know how many divorces and those sorts of things that happen at this time as well. And I think, you know, for me to be able to have enough information about this can be part of the process, these feelings, and to be able to communicate it to him. So that was the first thing. And it was then when I started deciding, okay, it is time to sort of start tracking my cycle and just sort of understanding the female body. I realized when I fell pregnant 17 years ago, I had no idea about pregnancy, had no idea about cycles. Just, you know, I got pregnant in the middle of my period. So I was bleeding when I got pregnant, hence having unprotected sex.
Yeah.
That didn't seem to work.
Yeah.
You know, all of this stuff that we're told around what's going to happen with our bodies and how it should be is not, I feel that we have to do our own research. So that was the first thing I think that changed for me. I've always seen this period of, I've always known that it was going to be about my power. Partly for me, I think if you haven't grown up within kind of the global beauty ideal, I suppose, or the Western beauty ideal,
yeah,
there's something about, I don't feel like I've lost beauty as I've got older, because I've become more of myself and owning who I am, and owning who I am as a woman of color as well, navigating kind of, you know, I live in Melbourne, Victoria, navigating white spaces, that actually it's allowed me to kind of own, this is what I look like, this is who I am, I don't subscribe, I don't want to be anything other than I am. And there's a power in that. I don't feel the need to look younger, although they do say black don't crack, you know, which is you know, I feel such a privilege to be this age. I have so much experience that I always feel, every birthday as I've got older, the one thing I keep saying is I've just started. That's how it feels.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. And, you know, vitality is obviously a really big value of yours, given that you're a marathon runner. And I first met you actually years and years ago now, when you were doing a raw food demonstration at one of the yoga studios I attended. So I've known for a long time about your raw food like way of living.
Yes.
And so how would you describe, you know, I mean, you've just sort of given us a little bit of information about your relationship to your body and how you feel more empowered, and also more fierce is what feels that's coming through for me. But so with regards to your relationship to your body, do you feel like, how much do you feel is your having vitality as a value really informs the way that you are in the world? Like, is that?
It's a good question. I am very, very committed to my well-being. It is one of my 3 core values. So it's very important to me. You know, there's the raw food aspect of it as well. And for those that are listening, I don't sort of chomp on, you know, lettuce leaves every day. For me, it's about adding more raw, and it's changed over years and it's different. I wasn't actually vegan when we first met. I was vegetarian, Shay, and adding this kind of more raw vegan food. And for the last 3.5 years, I became vegan because I've been training for a marathon, and I thought, oh, I'll just give it a go, see how I feel vegan, see what my recovery is like. And it was so astounding how my body recovered by, you know, eating nuts, seeds, plants, and vegetables. And because I train as a chef, food is enjoyable to me. So the idea for me of having like, oh, I wonder what I can create now with this kind of vegan idea. My husband's been vegan for nearly a decade. It was an easier transition for me. Being in Melbourne is very easy to be a vegan. So yeah, it's important to me making sure that I'm moving my body. I'm just one of those people in lockdown. I knew from the beginning, after it kind of stopped being novel, and I was in bed eating crumpets, which are not raw. I think that'd be ugly. I'm very tasteless, raw crumpets. I was in bed watching reruns of Friends for about a week, eating crumpets, and just being very conscious of, this is what well-being looks like for me right now. I'm not going to push through. I don't need to look like I'm tackling lockdown. This is new. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm just going to retreat to my bed because that feels nice. And I know myself well enough that I wasn't going to stay in my bed forever. But when I kind of eaten enough crumpets and sort of felt a bit sick from doing that, I thought, if there was one thing that you have to do through lockdown, what is it? And I knew it was to sweat every day. So whether that was out in the garden and just skipping, whether it was here in my study, just, you know, doing a workout. I got into quite a few, you know, women on YouTube, different fitness things. I just knew that is going to be the foundation for you to be able to navigate the roller coaster of uncertainty that's going on in the world right now.
So it's really awesome to hear that you had that experience of being in bed eating crumpets and watching Friends, because when I look at you, I wonder, you know, like I know that you take time out, and I know that you know, your retreat time is really important to you. But just to hear those real examples of actually, you know, of just surrendering and just actually doing it is so amazing. For a lot of women, they might do that and find it really hard to pull themselves up and out of it again. And also for women who haven't had that really strong vitality piece, so they haven't been doing yoga and running and eating raw food throughout their lives, and then they reach midlife and menopause, and they become aware that they need to make changes. I associate this to being, you know, in terms of making those changes, to really connecting with your why and your reason for wanting to do it. Is that something that you feel is really important, or do you have some more advice for women in ways that they can connect to that when, you know, just from a mindset perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as a coach, I don't really like to give advice, but I will share for you what my why is. And I think that's really great. It's important. And I think in midlife, our why has to change. It can't, actually, no, maybe it can be. But for me, it can't be about the aesthetic. Like, it has to be, I need to look after myself so I can show up in the world as the best version of myself. As a speaker, as a coach, so I can create space for people. So I feel like that I've looked after myself enough so I can genuinely be present for other people and be of service to them, that I can be present to, you know, the roller coaster of raising teenagers, to be a present and connected wife, to be able to ask for my needs. It's really important for me. And what I think as well for women in midlife, we have to be mindful that we're not kind of putting harsh rules on ourselves. And it's so interesting. People do not, because, you know, the reality is that probably my consumption of raw food now is very different to how it was 7 years ago. It's winter. I live in Melbourne and I'm English. So there's a lot of pudding that gets involved at this time of year, you know, and pudding is part of my well-being. And it's why I chose well-being. How do I be a well-being? That's my focus, not how do I punish myself? How do I, you know, fit myself into a box? I can be a vegan and then sometimes through my cycle just be like, God, I really want cheese on toast right now. That's my comfort food from my childhood. And I will occasionally have cheese on toast. It's always the week before my period if I want it. And if I want it, I'll just have it. Without this kind of label of, oh, but it means that I can't do that or I can't do this. Or so I think the invitation that I would say to women that are listening to this is, the gift we give ourselves in midlife is really understanding who we are. Being able to peel back who we've been told we should be, who we think we should be, and starting to piece together, who do I want to be? Like, at 47, I think if I have 40 years left, that's a gift. What do I want to do with those 40 years?
Absolutely. And I think also one thing I've been focusing on recently is the fact that it really is an alchemical process, that letting go of our conditioning, you know, and that there can be a real dark night of the soul for women. So just really acknowledging that as well, that there's a process of letting go. I feel like I've just come out the tunnel of that, which is just absolutely amazing. But, you know, just acknowledging how much my body had changed and going through stages of grieving that and then comparing myself and, you know, all of that really, all of that stuff that needs to be processed before you let it go. And I think the letting go and the surrender is really interesting. And going back to me in lockdown with my cycle changing, like some of those weeks before were just physically really painful and uncomfortable. And I'm sort of sending a message to my coach and just saying to him, just to let you know, I'm a perimenopausal woman. I'm not going to be pushing through my workouts. So I'll just let you know, it's not going to happen this week. And I wanted to say that to him, not I've had a lot, but like, I am a perimenopausal woman. I'm going through a transition. This is changing. And I remember saying to my husband, I don't have to push through. I'm not speaking this week. I'm in lockdown. So I'm going to allow myself to just feel this uncomfortable physical feelings and these kind of emotions that seem overwhelming. I'm just going to surrender to them because I know that is the pathway to honoring this transition. No, that's amazing. I wondered if you had any inklings to pull back, given that you run, you know, 40 to 100 kilometers. So that's been happening.
I don't run 40 to 100 kilometers every week. Let's just be very clear. That's just race distances. But I think this goes back to knowing oneself. So if I decide to lessen my training because I'm physically uncomfortable, because things are just changing, or I just feel, to be honest, if I'm feeling emotionally not great, I'm definitely going to get out there. But if I'm physically just being like pounding, even on trails, which is soft and beautiful, it's just not, it doesn't feel good for my nether regions. I know myself well enough to know that's not going to be a slippery slope that I'm then going to stop my training. So that's what I mean. We have to understand who we are. For some women, it's going to be a case of, I need to keep training, but the training just has to be less. You know, instead of doing a half-hour workout, I just need to do 10 minutes. I just need to do 20 squats just so that I have that momentum for myself. But it goes back to knowing who we are and what we need. Yeah,
absolutely. So when you go away and you take time out, You are absolutely amazing at setting boundaries and making sure that you're not contactable, which I love. And I know that you went to the snow recently.
Yes.
With your family.
Yes.
And I'm interested to know, after you got back from the snow, there were a couple of little updates on your Instagram around some of the things that you did for yourself.
Yes.
So do you have a way or a practice or particular things that you do when you're taking that retreat time that really nourishes your vitality and your energy? Like, is there anything particular that you do?
So I do go 100% offline because one of my other core values is connection. So I like to be connected to the people I am with.
Yeah.
And to be honest, one of the things I do, because I very much thrive on structure. Like, I love rhythm. I believe we're rhythmical, seasonal beings. And I, just for my temperament, I embrace that. So then when I go offline, I'm just like, whatever. I get up whenever I want. I may journal, I may not. I may meditate, I may not. Generally, I do those things, but it may just be, instead of 20-minute meditation, I'll do a 5-minute meditation. I do a lot of walking. So once again, in my body, I do a lot of hiking, walking. And yeah, I think that's one, because I'm such a structured person generally, I just kind of let it all go consciously. It's the surrender thing again. I know I'm not going to lose myself because for 2 weeks I didn't get up at a certain time and I didn't do meditation for a certain amount of time. I just know, no, this is part of and I actually think this last holiday, I did journal most days, but just not in the morning, just like whenever, when you kind of have a structure and a weekly rhythm within work, I know I have to kind of get it done in the morning. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen? But on holiday, it didn't matter. So I think, but to be honest, Shay, if people were willing to examine why they feel they need to be connected during holiday time and were able to let that go, it feels like, I had a 2-week holiday. It feels like 6 months.
Yeah.
Time
I can really relate to that.
Yeah.
I just had a small break with my daughter as well.
Right.
And it was incredible, and I think one of the things to remember, and just picking up on what you said about walking and just being in nature and not worrying about having any structure, but actually the value that can come from just walking and being in nature. For me, the value that came from going to the beach twice a day and just giving myself to the water and playing, was it just did so much for my well-being, for my vitality, for my sense of self. So that's an important message, that it doesn't always have to be like, oh, it's important to do this, and then if you do that helps you to do this. It can it's just a letting go.
It's just a letting go. And for other people, it may be that actually their holiday structure is really great, because maybe they have a holiday away from their children or caring responsibilities or work, and they don't manage to have that structure. I'm working with a client now. She's on holiday. Actually, she's in Britain, and she's holidaying, in Brittany. And for her, it's having the daily yoga, meditation, and journaling is giving her everything she needs to work out, what is it I need to do, for the chapter of my life. So I don't think one size fits all. Once again, it's tuning in, who am I and what do I need? That's such good advice. Absolutely. So my next question is around women entering the peak of their careers at midlife. So we're sort of edging into the leadership sort of questions now, which I think are really important to ask you. You're a wealth of information there. So what do you think are some of the main challenges women leaders face at this stage of life, KEMI? I would probably say that I work with, we're all very, very different, but obviously working with female leaders again and again in my private coaching practice, there are definitely the women that are stepping into this time of midlife and they are going for it unapologetically. I know why I'm here. I know the value I bring, and I am going to lead, full out. And then definitely there are those women as well where they feel like they're losing confidence and they're losing relevance and they're struggling with their work role, but also the role of being partners and carers for parents and carers for children. And for them, it's really looking at, am I holding on to a form of leadership, which is maybe the leadership that I picked up 20 years ago, probably from a white male, possibly, And is that me having those rules around what leadership looks like, is that actually stopping me from being able to lead as an authentic person? I work with some women where their gender is really important to them. They're literally like, I am a female leader and I own that. And for others, it's no, I'm a leader and I happen to be female. And I work with whoever is you know, whoever is in front of me, and I'm present to what it is that they're identifying with. So, you know, imposter syndrome comes up for women at different stages of their career for different reasons. I always feel you can get into one room and then you're there for a little bit. And then you go into another room, you get the promotion or you get another role, and suddenly the imposter syndrome is there again. And that's actually part of growth, though. And I don't want to keep saying this again and again, but this is true. We just need to know what our imposter says to us. We can't tackle it to the ground. We can't ignore it. We can't pretend it's not there. The power comes from going, oh yeah, my imposter says you're not good enough. Said that since I was 5. That's what comes up when I'm feeling challenged or vulnerable. And these are the steps that I need to take to make sure that that voice isn't louder than the evidence that shows me that I am very good at my job. Or that I am learning something new. And that feels scary, but actually I am good enough.
Yeah, that's an excellent strategy. And, you know, as you say, women at midlife, different things, different women take different approaches. And some women aren't really impacted by menopause in the way other women are. And I've been giving a lot of thought, because I'm now a menopausal woman. So I went through menopause early when I was 44.
Right.
And I've been giving a lot of thought to women who are going through that menopausal journey and are facing the challenges of, you know, hormonal imbalance and the vulnerability that comes up. You know, I've been reading a lot of articles recently about women flooding with having a lot of blood gushing all at once. And, you know, when you're in certain circumstances, you need to be really prepared for that and how vulnerable that is. So, you know, it's this balance between having, you know, being in a leadership role as a midlife woman and having to work with this immense vulnerability that can come up for a lot of women, and balance, you know, the need or the perhaps the conditioning to push through, you know, and to actually pretend that that's not happening. And
actually, I think one of the most and you know, different people. So I understand this isn't going to work for everyone. But there is definitely an opportunity for midlife women to own that they're midlife women, to say to bosses, I am perimenopausal. Do you know about perimenopause? These are my symptoms. This is what it looks like. This is what I'm going to need from you. To say to your team, look, I'm perimenopausal. The week before I bleed, this is what happens to me. And to be honest, I'm at a point that if I was working with a team or had a boss that was kind of like, probably not a place I want to be. Like I don't have long enough now to be apologizing for my humanity within any space. So we can keep it hunched up, we can keep it quiet, we can make it feel as if it's something wrong that somehow diminishes our sexuality and our power, but it only does that if we allow it to do that. So, like I said, when I said to my coach, I didn't say, oh, feeling a bit off this week, missed a few things. I said, no, I'm perimenopausal. And I'm not going to push my body through, and my cycle's getting heavier and it just doesn't feel right to do this, you know? And I knew that his response was going to dictate whether or not he would be my coach for my next marathon. His response was great. You know, he's an older guy. He's got a perimenopausal wife. He goes, Kemi, I completely understand. It can be a really tough transition to navigate. Really glad that you're surrendering to the process. And I was like, yes, you can stay. I'll keep paying you money. You're okay. So I think as well, you're right that there can be these hormonal changes that happen, but we don't have to do it on our own. It doesn't have to be hidden, that we can actually own it. You know, we don't, for me, it's sad. And I don't mean sad as in the person is a loser. I mean, it makes me feel sad that so many of us for different stages in our life have felt that we've had to hide parts of ourselves, fit in, to belong, to be accepted, to be loved. And actually midlife is a time to just go, my love for myself is more important, and to be able to own, this is my story right now, and this is my transition right now, and this is what I need from the people around me to support me to manage this transition in the best way that I can.
Can I get an amen? That is brilliant. We are so on the same page with regards to that. You know, like I talk a lot also about just being willing, because it's vulnerable, because it's something that we're really forging a path forward with, particularly at the moment. Like I would say only in the past few years has this conversation really been something that is coming to the fore. Reading a lot more articles in mainstream media about it. But still, you know, there are a lot of women who feel that they can't, you know. So actually having these conversations is what Midlife Pleasure and Power is all about, to help so that women can watch these conversations and listen to these conversations and feel supported in being able to do that, that it's okay to say, I need this at this stage of my life, and it in no way diminishes their worth.
No, and I also, Shay, one thing that I found as well, maybe in the last couple of months, I've been doing lots of lockdown walks with different women, and, you know, and these are friends, and, you know, they might say, oh God, you know, my partner right now is just something. And I never want to go, oh, it's perimenopause. I don't want to diagnose them. I'm not a doctor. But there have been a few women that have been saying things to me that it sounds like perimenopausal symptoms to me. So then I've just said, you know, for me, I know that I'm in perimenopause right now, and this is what's happening for me. And they're like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Is that what happens? And it's surprising to me how many women have, in the same way that I knew nothing about pregnancy until I got pregnant, they have no idea the reason they hate their partners is hormonal. It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily real. It may be the end of the relationship. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I do remember listening to a woman who was interviewed about menopause. She talks to corporations about menopause and says how difficult it can be for women having hot flushes, and they're in an open environment. They can't put their head in the fridge or the freezer if they need to. And one of the things that she said is that she spoke to a male radio host, older male, you know, middle-aged man, and she spoke about some of the symptoms, and he said, oh my gosh, I wish I had known this, because I think maybe my wife and I wouldn't have got divorced. And then he contacted her a couple of months later and said, the amount of men that have called in or emailed me to say, I don't think my wife had any idea, and I certainly had no idea, and we just thought it was the end of our relationship. But maybe if we had known that she was going through all of this hormonal change, maybe we could have navigated it in a different way. And yeah, it's good to know what's going on. It's good for me. My husband, babe, it's the week before. Let's just, you know, let's check in 7 days. And he gets it. And that's kind of a way of me preserving my marriage right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's so important to bring the men into this conversation.
Or the partners, you know.
Partners, of course. Yep. And yeah, from that perspective, you know, it requires a strong container. That's the other thing, you know, it requires a really strong container. So it's an opportunity to evolve our relationships as well, you know, evolve our experience of life. I mean, that's what it's all about. But yeah, you know, it requires work.
It does. And also, once again, communication. I have a 17-year-old boy and a 15-year-old daughter, and I am telling them, I'll say the same to them. Or it's mum's week before. They know that I'm in perimenopause because I've told them. I don't need to hide it from them. I don't, you know, I don't give it to them. It's not theirs to hold. But I will just say to, you know, you're going through hormonal stages, you're a teenager. It's the same for me. I'm just on the other end. And so, you know, when you feel a bit grumpy and you're kind of groaning at me, that's how I feel. So probably best if you just keep your distance. And they're like, okay, mum, no problem. Great. Because I want him to know, if he has a female partner, this is part of it. I want Elle to know that this is going to be part of her journey. It's nothing to be afraid of. Just try and ask for what you need in that time. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I actually went through perimenopause and menopause at the same time my daughter started going through puberty and getting her period. So that year was just insane. That's fun. And and without that conversation, without that language, I don't know, like, it was already hard with language and with the container, but without it, it's just impossible. So that message is just so vitally important. So I'm just going to ask you about just jumping back to women in the workforce. Leadership, to leadership. And to just ask you about so Brene, being a Dare to Lead facilitator, which is just such a fabulous thing to be. I love Brene's work so much. So she talks about taking risks and authentic leadership being intrinsically connected to our willing to be vulnerable. So I have been considering a lot just how hard it must be for some women in menopause who are having symptoms and are feeling vulnerable, how much that might impact on their ability to take risks in a patriarchal culture. So, you know, like I've seen it in action in the corporate world, you know, just how, you know, how women
often subscribe, or have to feel like they have to subscribe to a more patriarchal culture. And yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about risk-taking, about authentic leadership in women that feel like they need to armor up.
Yeah. And for those listeners as well that don't sort of maybe know that concept of armoring up, Brene Brown talks about this idea of, that we put on armor to protect ourselves, and that most people are going around the world completely armored up. That we don't give of ourselves, we don't want to be vulnerable because we've been hurt, or we failed, or the fear of rejection, or any of those things. And I think as well, Shay, what we have to do here as well is just look at what risk is for each individual woman, because it's very different. I just shared earlier about, there is an opportunity to actually say to your boss or to your team members, if you are the boss, this is what's going on. For some women, that is too much of a risk to be that vulnerable. Maybe share an experience that feels shameful for them or is embarrassing for them. So there's also that idea of what does risk look like for different women, because, when I work with individual clients, it's always about what actions suit who you are now, your responsibilities now, and how much vulnerability and growth you're up for right now, because that is the growth that is sustainable and honors who we are and how we're showing up in the world at that time. So, there are definitely women that, like I said, just kind of take on that lioness thing of, I want the promotion, I deserve to be partner, I'm going to go for that, stuff this BS, and I'm in there. And I have friends like that. And then there are other women, as I said, that feel like they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I suppose one thing, and as you've said this before, is that support is so important at this time. I have found a female doctor who has on her website, I am a perimenopausal woman working with perimenopausal women and their hormones and how they want to show up in life right now.
Yeah, safe.
Yeah, to be able to that you don't have to navigate this alone. Which means that I think if you feel like you're held, like you're saying, if you have a container, then you are able to maybe take some risks. And we can get caught up in the minutiae of, hot sweats and flooding and all of these things. Or we can kind of look at the bigger picture of, like, I've only got 40 years left if I'm lucky. So what do I want to do? How do I want to contribute? Okay, maybe my breasts aren't as perky as they were. Okay, maybe my bum's not as perky. I mean, mine is, because I'm African, so my bum's always going to be perky. That's just the nature of my genes. That I can focus on that. I can focus on trying to be what I was like when I was 20, or I can actually think I have lived experiences now that as a leader, really, really enhances my leadership. That I, as a woman, as a female leader, have levels of empathy and compassion that I can now bring to the fore. I can tell you now, a lot of the work that I did during 2020 was Dare to Lead work with organizations, individuals, or with organizations. So many of the leaders that I was working with, and some of them were men, struggled with how empathetic can I be? Just don't know how much I need to listen to my team's concerns about COVID and their job or homeschooling, or when we kind of have, the business is not failing, but is struggling. I'm just not sure how much time I need to spend to that. And it was the older women that were just there and present. Were able to just go, no, I know that what I need right now is to be present to the humanity of the people that I am leading. And I'm happy to give that time and I won't question it. Those women, some in the paper, maybe younger, or sort of very much in that kind of patriarchal model of push through and let's stay focused on the bottom line and have you done the task. They really struggled. And I realized the reason they struggled, they couldn't be empathetic to their teams because they couldn't be empathetic to themselves. Because they weren't present to their feelings and their emotions around COVID and lockdown and the instability around the world. And so they shut it off. They armored up. Everything's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Saying to the team, it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. And the team were just not engaging, just not responding. When they were able to go, okay, I'm struggling today. I'm struggling.
This is such the gift of these times. Is that it's forcing people to be more empathetic and to reflect more on their relationship with self. And women, as you say, are more inclined to be able to do that. So, it really is, I think a lot about the fact that it really is right now that these times that we're living through are the time of the midlife woman. Like this is our time to shine. This is everything that we have to offer is needed in the world right now. So therefore, and it's about giving transmissions of that. you know, and being that, and being
Yes.
able to be willing to, which is vulnerable to a lot of women, because it takes courage, courage to prioritize something like that over the bottom line.
Yeah,
you know?
and also to add to the two things I'd like to add to that as well is that one, I definitely saw that it was the older women, the women in midlife, that found that easier. Whereas the younger leaders that I'm working with, not so much, because they had the very much push through. I'm just going to get it done.
Yeah.
And so then the work, and they were burning out, you know, so there was an impact to that.
Yeah.
And I think I'd also add to that as well, that it's the world. I know everyone keeps saying this, so it seems silly for me to say it, but the world is changing, like, and it is changing in so quickly. Language is changing, you know, how people identifying themselves, you know, in regards to gender and sexuality, like things are changing quite quickly compared to how they've changed in the past. And so this really is the time for midlife women who want to lead. Maybe they don't, you know, which is fine, but who want to lead. This is definitely the time to be able to stand up, you know, looking at, you know, it's kind of hard to look at maybe what's going on in Australian politics. I don't want to deviate too much there. But when you look at the Democrats in America and just look at the leadership model there of how many women in midlife are leading in that space.
It's thrilling.
It's thrilling. And the diversity of those women as well. Like when I first saw that picture, I think when they first put up that picture.
And I've got goosebumps.
I just cried.
Yeah, it is. It's so powerful. It is a end indicator that it is time. And I love the fact that these gifts are becoming valued as well. And then you look at someone like Joe Biden as well, who is the antithesis of the patriarchal leadership model, who is about empathy and connection. Even his speech, look at the speech pattern. It's so slow, so measured. He doesn't need to let us know how big his penis is or small. You know, it's just not about that. It's about being of service, impactful service. And I think that's one thing as women of midlife, that he is now embodying a leadership model that actually the world needs, which not means that we then can, as if he's giving us permission, but it shows us, no, this is what the world needs. Jacinda Ardern, exactly the same. Empathy, authenticity, not having to know all the answers is absolutely fine in leadership right now. We don't have to be this kind of all-knowing, all-seeing. And to be honest, for those people that have that leadership model, teams don't connect to them. They don't connect to the all-seeing, omnipresent leader that's a dictator. No one is interested in that anymore. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. My goodness, there have been so many pearls of wisdom in this. I love it. And so much, you know, we're talking so much about exactly what I'd hoped we talked about. So I'm really excited about that, Kemi. So I'm going to end on a question for you now, which is, you know, there are so many pearls of wisdom, and it's hard to define, you know, one piece of advice that you think needs to be transmitted the most. But if you could do that, what would it be? I think because so many women at midlife are holding a lot of relationships, you know, whether that's at work, in the home, their parents, their children. I think what I would like to leave the listeners with is that it is possible to be a valuable human being and not sacrifice ourselves. Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, that's so powerful and so important. Kemi, it's been such a joy to talk to you today, and it's such a thrill to have you a part of this conversation series. It really is. I've had such an admiration for you for a long time. So thank you so much for your voice, and thank you for your time today. Thank you, Shay. As you know, the feeling is mutual. It is so important that you have this podcast and that you're bringing this conversation to the ears of as many women as possible, and not even those in midlife. You know, as I said, I started having this, wanting to know about this in my mid-30s. And, you know, now this conversation is happening, and it's just wonderful that you're at the forefront of this conversation in Australia. So congratulations, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Kemi. Yeah, take care. Bye. You too. Bye-bye.